After the age of Fairy was forgotten, the Danubian Druids became the mythological, legendary deities, avatars of the Celtic people. The Sidhe were thought to have always resided in the invisible world, and the era of magic ended. It gave way instead to a false lineage to rule Europe in the guise of Holy Mother Church, while it was being run and transformed by the dark decisions of powerful people. Although the Gnosticism of the original Christians, those that inspired the secret Gospels, as well as the mysteries that Christ himself was initiated into, that which emerged in the Dark Ages was led under the name of Christ's work, but developed into a religion of propaganda, control, and genocide. While the surviving members of the Elven-Ffayrie had some resentment against specific ignorant members of the Christian tradition, they did not, in actuality, find any contradiction between Christ's actual teachings and their own. The misuse of a religious empire marked the beginning of the Dark Ages, a time when even Christians were leaving the Catholic Church to start their own Protestant religions. In breaking with the original Church, however, these new religions continued by removing elements from the Bible, alternating wordings, and removing traditions and customs. No longer being a part of Rome, they also lost access to the Vatican records. During the Dark Ages, a new version of the Bible emerged, eliminating all references to the Elven-Ffayrie histories, mysticism, reincarnation, some of the works of Jesus, and several full books. By this time, the Elven-Ffayrie dragon folk were construed as demons and devils to the new church. The church saw the Elven-Ffayrie as a threat. No longer would they be considered the true sons of God, as had been indicated in the Old Testament. No longer would they be thought of as the true ruling class of Europe, as had been handed down through the dynasty of kings, which allegedly descended from heaven thousands of years ago, as has been indicated in the kingless and dynasties in Egypt and Sumerian, Babylonian, Mesopotamian lore. The Elven histories became fictitious mythology. For example, in one myth, God comes to Lilith when she's bathing her children and asks her to present all of them to him. Being embarrassed by those who were not clean by the time of God's arrival, she hid away the unwashed, and of course, knowing full well the truth, God asked her if she had presented all of her children to him, and she replied by saying yes. And as a curse, those Elven-Ffayrie who had been hidden from God were forever to be hidden from the eyes of men. And that's just one story, version, thing that emerged. An even more disturbing genesis is found concerning the Nordic Elven-Ffayrie. In this version, the Elven-Ffayrie beings emerge or are born from the maggots who fed on the corpse of a Norse wizard or giant, Ymir. Other legends of the Dark Ages depict the Elven-Ffayrie as fallen angels. Not in the sense of the Anunnaki being from heaven and earth came, but in the sense of creatures of hell and whatnot. And The pixies, well, the pixies, the church has explained, are the souls of the children who died before being baptized into Catholicism. So, as a result of an annihilated legacy, it's difficult for contemporary society to imagine what it was like in the Age of Fairy. Looking at a skeletal timeline concerning ancient Sumeria or Mesopotamia, it becomes clear that events of Elven history and historical events coincide but are not sufficient for understanding what life was like, what was happening on a cultural level beyond pottery and arrowheads. They reveal nothing concerning the history, the rites, the traditions, and the mythos of the people. And history keeping is a dangerous business. Entire traditions and races and people have been pushed out of existence because of biases and errors in record keeping. Once written, things then become rewritten, re-recorded, and then changed again. With each new discovery, one must alter what was previously accepted as fact, or be a victim to ignorance. A nation will take over another and then rewrite their history. And this was the case when the Romans finally conquered the Celts and annihilated Elvish Druidism, forcing most survivors underground. Interesting use of terminology, because instead of seeing the Elven-Ffayrie Druids as moving to a land physically beneath the surface world, they instead go underground, or rather remove themselves from public sight.
Hello? I'll call you back. I need the agent Tim.